Well, hello and welcome to another Faith, Philosophy and Life with me, Mr. Shelton. I hope you are doing well. We're on a short series about miracles. Last time we thought about what a miracle was, and we thought, were miracles just an unlikely chance? And today we're going to look at two particular case studies. So we're going to consider what miracles are. It's going to be good if we can explain different views about miracles. Great if we can evaluate if miracles happen or not and why, and even better if we can assess if we can still trust people that claim to have miraculous experiences. So grab your pen and paper where you get the title and date written down, because here's our cheesy intro sequence. Okay, so welcome back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some pictures up on the screen. I'd like you to look at these and to work out what links them all together, okay, and what happened. Famous pictures these. I'm sure you may have seen these before. What links them all together and what happened? Okay, so I'm not going to give too much away, but it is to do with a plane crash where miraculously, and I use that term maybe in the wrong way, everyone survived. It's called the Miracle of the Hudson River, and there was a film made of it. So this is what Hollywood said. Let's watch this.
How did you pull off the impossible?
Sully. Miracle on the Hudson. That was kind of a good omen in a bad period.
And it happened 100 seconds after takeoff. We lost thrust in both engines. It was a life-changing event for everyone on the airplane. The NTSB investigation, which is a big part of the story that people don't know.
Until I read the script, I didn't know the investigative board was trying to paint the picture that he had done the wrong thing. They were kind of railroading him into his fault, and that wasn't the case at all. There's something about a near miss like that. It makes you appreciate life as you have it.
Cactus 1549, runway 4, clear for takeoff.
Cactus 1549, clear for takeoff. I'll never get over how beautiful it is up here.
Life's easier in the air.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Cactus 1549. I've lost thrust on both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia.
I have an emergency. He lost both engines. Returning immediately.
Today, we begin with our investigation on the crash of U.S. Airways Flight 1549.
Cactus 1549, if we can get it for you, do you want to try to land runway 13?
We are unable. We may end up in the Hudson. This was not a crash. This was dual engine loss at a lower altitude than any jet in history, with 155 souls on board.
Cactus 1549, it's going to be left traffic, runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land?
No one has ever trained for an incident like that.
1549, runway 4 is available.
I don't think we can make any runway. What about over to our right?
Off your right side is Teterboro Airport.
Now, look, I'm sorry if you're frustrated, but our job is to investigate how a plane ended up in the Hudson River.
What if I did get this wrong? Endangered the lives of all those passengers.
Okay, you're scaring me now, Sully.
You can land runway 1 Teterboro.
We can't make it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
I've delivered 1 million passengers over 40 years, but in the end, I'm going to be judged on 208 seconds. We're going to end up in the Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus?
This is the captain. Brace for impact.
Okay, so that was the Hollywood version of what occurred. Now, it was based on a real story. So I've got two clips to show you here, which I've taken from local media reports in America, in New York. I'd like you to watch this and just see what you think about it.
January 2009. U.S. Airways Flight 1549 departs New York's LaGuardia Airport. There are 150 passengers on board, bound for Charlotte, North Carolina.
The aircraft took off uneventfully, and very shortly after takeoff, they lost all engines as a result of birds.
I caught something out of the corner of my eye, and slightly to our right, but still ahead of us, was a line of birds. And they were very, very close, too close for us to maneuver around.
Whoa! After quickly assessing the situation, Captain Sully Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles realized that without engine power, they're not going to make it to any nearby airport.
We're going to be in the Hudson. Brace for impact.
You need to be aware of your brace position. In many, many accidents, the cabin crew are trying desperately to get the passengers into the brace position, but because the passengers haven't read the safety features card, they don't know what that means.
Get your heads down and stay down!
Proper brace position is knees together, feet flat on the floor, body bent as far forward as possible, with arms wrapped under the legs or braced against the seat in front of you.
Your body's going to be thrown forward. So if you can get yourself into that position beforehand, the amount of movement back and forth is going to be reduced and the level of injury will be less.
In the cabin, the passengers prepare for the inevitable.
All the passengers really started kind of pulling together, and somebody yelled out as we were going down.
Be ready at the doors!
The folks at the door says, "We're ready."
Clay Presley does what all passengers should. He stays calm and tries to think ahead.
So I started thinking about, if we're going to crash, I know I need to figure out where the exit rows are. If the water comes in, you need to be able to hold your breath long enough to get to those 4 or 5 rows and get the doors open if you can.
But before anyone can escape, they must first survive a high-speed impact.
Looked like the airplane was going right for the bottom of the Hudson River. Then the airplane popped up, and it was just sort of gently rocking in the waves.
In an instant, the $75 million plane has become an unlikely boat floating down the Hudson River. It's now filling with freezing water.
That water was cold. It was very cold, that's why your feet are freezing.
If you land in the Hudson in the middle of the winter, the water is going to be very cold and you're going to suffer from hypothermia very quickly. Their feet and their hands will get numb. They're going to be useless.
Passengers nearest the exits open the doors.
I just jumped up very quickly and started making my way to the emergency door. And so I worked my way out onto the wing, just a few steps to start with.
Fortunately, they had slide rafts rather than just slides. So what they were able to do was evacuate passengers into the slide rafts.
In the end, all 150 passengers and the entire crew of Flight 1549 are brought to safety. Another example of how serious aviation accidents often end well.
Now to an event so many of us will never forget. I know I'll never forget it because I actually saw it with my own eyes. What became known as the miracle on the Hudson, a passenger jet making an emergency landing on the Hudson River. It's hard to believe. That was 10 years ago. Amy, you went back to the river with Sully.
That's right, Sully. And yeah, 10 years, can you believe it? It's been a decade. Well, I visited the scene of the miracle with the man who made it all happen, guiding that plane down into the water and saving every single person on board.
Who can forget that day?
We can't do it. We're going to be in the Hudson.
The incredible emergency landing of U.S. Airways Flight 1549 after hitting a flock of geese, paralyzing its engines.
There is an airplane down in the Hudson River right off Manhattan.
155 souls on board, all surviving, including a 9-month-old baby. Our own Robin Roberts witnessed the crash from her apartment overlooking the Hudson.
It was just an amazing landing. The fuselage never broke up or anything like that.
It became known as the Miracle on the Hudson. The miracle worker? Captain Chesley Sullenberger, famously known as Sully, the hero pilot who calmly landed the plane in the middle of the river between New York City and New Jersey.
This was your landing strip.
We made a runway out of a river. And by doing that, I knew that we had the best chance of saving every life, and we would avoid the possibility of a post-crash fire.
Just a few hundred feet from where the plane actually crashed, with the ferries that helped save them just behind us, Sully reflected on this 10th anniversary.
I knew immediately it was going to be a life-changing event for everyone on the airplane and their families. The first New York waterway ferry arrived 3 minutes 55 seconds after we had touched the water. And that was critical, especially on such a cold day when many people had gotten wet and hypothermia can kill in minutes.
Sully says the teamwork of passengers, crew, and all the volunteers and first responders says a lot about our world.
When we work together, when we remember our common humanity, there is little we cannot accomplish.
Now, this is very exciting. Later today, Sully is going to reunite with many of those passengers on board that plane. So tomorrow is the actual anniversary, and there will be a ceremony and a big get-together for all those passengers and crew. And I'll get to share an exclusive interview with Sully and some of those passengers tomorrow. I'm heading down to Charlotte right now. They've got the plane in the Aviation Museum there for people to witness and see the miracle itself.
I know, and the passengers have kept in touch. Oh, I thought that was your phone again. The passengers have kept in touch with him over the years, he and his wife, and they've shared with them a burst that they would not have been able to experience, and graduations and things like that.
And it gives you chills, doesn't it?
It really does. And I'll never forget being in my apartment.
You were just looking out the window?
I just happened to be looking out, and I was on the 11th floor, and why would a plane be going by? And I was a second caller to 911, and it was an emergency landing. It was not a crash landing. He used that river as his runway.
Amazing. It's
really
incredible.
was.
I can't believe it's been 10 years.
I know, hard to believe.
Okay, so there's 3 questions now that I would like you to answer. They're across there, in fact, there you go. So what would this take to be a miracle? So what would this take to be a miracle? Is this a miracle in your opinion? Does a miracle have to be from God? And could a doctor consider to be a miracle worker? Okay, so there's your 3 questions. What would this take to be a miracle? Does a miracle have to be from God? And could a doctor be a miracle worker? So have a look at that. Give those a go. Pause me and come back to me when you are done. Okay, so miracle or coincidence? What I'd like you to do, give yourself sort of 10 minutes for this. Again, in the Google Drive below, you'll find a link to this. And it's basically a little letter, miracle or coincidence. I'd like you to create a letter from either perspective of a religious believer or a non-religious person, constructing a letter to argue for or against miracles. So taking the logic of what we did last lesson, taking up what we've done today so far, what would you define a miracle to be? And would you say that they help belief in God or not? So I've made a bit of a jump there, but maybe have a look at that, download that, make sure you get the letter template, give yourselves 10 minutes to try and piece together some of the things that we've been thinking about so far. You'll have to pause me and come back to me when you're done. Okay, so I wonder what was in your letter. We said I was going to look at 2 case studies, and one of those was the miracle of the Hudson River. I'm going to play something that is, in my opinion, simply my opinion, a little bit weird. So if you heard this story, what would you think? If you heard this story, what would you think? Let's just watch this now.
We can go right back to what was called in Ireland Black 47. It was 1847, and the potato crop failed. The people did not own the land of Ireland, and because we were under foreign rule at that time, quite a lot of the resources of the country left the country.
I saw another cart full of grain leaving for the port this morning. I can't believe they're taking food out of the country.
People not knowing whether they'd literally have a roof over their head that evening.
This is our home. We have nowhere else to go.
Or the next day, or the next week.
No people, nowhere else to go.
Leave them alone! Get down!
How could anybody allow this to happen? But it did happen.
At least let us get our things.
There was no alternative food available to people. People died from famine, from starvation. There were many famine-related illnesses like typhus and many others.
An awful period. It was the worst one, but not the only one, because after that there were famines recurring down through the years, right down to 1879, which itself was a famine year.
It'll get better.
At the time of the apparition, there was so much suffering again in the country.
You made the right choice. You're a good father.
I suppose it's the presence. If she could be present at the cross to deal with that for other people around her at the time, she can be present to us now, indeed in whatever suffering that we are going through.
Our Holy Mother has appeared at the chapel. Quickly, come to you, see.
My goodness. What a vision. Why us?
For me, what happened at Knock was a divine intervention in some ways to give a message of hope and joy and indeed mercy to the people of Ireland at this time in their history.
It's a gift from God.
Okay, so just imagine this is what happened. It's the story of Knock. Knock's in County Mayo in Ireland. On the 21st of August 1879 at 8 o'clock, 15 witnesses claimed to have seen a vision of three saints, Mary the Mother of Jesus, St Joseph and St John the Evangelist, in the local village church. The poor humble witnesses distinctly behold the Blessed Virgin Mary clothed in white robes and with a brilliant crown on her head. Over the forehead, where there was a crown fitted with a bow, she wore a beautiful full bloom golden rose. She was praying with her eyes as her hands lifted towards heaven. St Joseph stood on Mary's right. He would turn towards her in an attitude of respect. His robes were also white, and St John was also on Mary's left, that's Our Lady's left. He was dressed in white clothes and resembled a bishop, having a small mitre, a small hat. He appeared to be preaching and had a book open in his left hand. The witnesses watched the apparition in pouring rain for 2 hours, saying prayers. Although the witnesses standing before the gable were drenched, no rain fell in the direction of the gable, and they felt the ground carefully with their hands, and it was perfectly dry as well. Mary was 86 at the time of the second commission in the inquiry, so people basically did a lot of work into this to see whether it in fact was real. She interviewed by commissioners in her bedroom. She was too ill to leave, and she gave her final testimony and concluded with the words, "I am clear about everything I've said. I'm going to make this statement knowing that I'm going before my God." And Mary died 6 weeks later. So she genuinely believed that what happened was true. As a devout Catholic, Mary would have believed that to die in a state of mortal sin would mean that she'd have gone to hell for eternity, and she would have known that to lie was such a mortal sin. So had she confessed to her sin to a priest, she would have been required to have set the record straight, and she never did this. She never did this. So she genuinely believed that what happened was real. So what are the possibilities? Well, that we would have seen exactly as the witnesses saw had we been there. The witnesses were deliberately lying, or the witnesses were in some way mistaken. So I'd like you to pause me now and just to write down your opinion on that. What do you think? What would you think about that scenario? Do you think that had you been there you would have seen what the witnesses saw? Do you think the witnesses would have been deliberately lying? Or do you think the witnesses in some way were mistaken? So pause me now while you do that. Come back to me in a moment. So, hoping to have a discussion at this point, which obviously is a little bit harder to do if you're watching this remotely, but maybe you've got some friends, unlike me, who you can be in contact with. So, if a miracle is an impossible thing happening, can one ever take place? Just think, right? If something is impossible, it can never occur. So if it can't occur, Can it ever take place? Therefore, do miracles therefore not exist? What sort of things might actually be impossible in the world? And some people think that a miracle is not just an unusual event or a coincidence, but something that has a significant significance with it as well. So what I'd like you to do is, if you can't have a discussion with other people, maybe make some notes now based on those questions. Maybe just 2 or 3 sentences for each would be brilliant. So pause me now while you do that. Come back to me when you are done. So, I want you now to imagine that that event was going to be put in a newspaper. We're not writing the newspaper article. What I'd like you to do is to think, how would you interrogate these witnesses? Who would you interview? How would you try and tear the story apart? And what do you think the responses would be? So, again, what I'd like you now to do is to have a look over those questions. Maybe have a chat, maybe not write things down if you can have other people you can chat to about this, but if you need to make a few notes, do so. I want you to get under the skin of this. What do you think happened? How would you try and find out the truth? To quote Mulder from the X-Files, the truth is out there, but what is the truth and how would you find it? So pause me now and just try and make a few notes of people that you would interview, the questions you would ask, and what you think their responses may be. Okay, so we said that we were going to think about philosophy as part of this unit. I said that at the start of last session. So what I'd like you to do is, again in the Google Drive below, I'd like you to access this grid. And this gives you a grid that you can just complete with regards to different philosophers. And the idea is that what you're going to do is you're going to summarize what these philosophers think about miracles. And you'll find that they are massively different from each other. How far do you agree with that person? Do you disagree strongly with them? Do you agree strongly with them? I think you'll find that you do have some quite strong opinions. Explain why. And then just a yes, no, do you think this person believes in God or not? So you need to access that. I'm going to put the philosophers behind me here. So you'll be able to get on with that between now and the end of the lesson. So you need that grid. So do download that. Here are the philosophers. I'm just going to move off the side of the screen. Okay, so I'm sure you can read that behind me if you need it. Again, I've got that in the Google Drive as well. So you're trying to work out, what do the miracles believe? Be aware they appear in 2 places. That is deliberate, even though there's obviously only 1 box for each of them. So Maurice Wiles believes that God's cruel if he heals 1 person and leaves people suffering. And that's repeated there on the right as well. So actually I think what I've done is I've just made those a little bit bigger on the screen, but I think the easiest thing for you to do is to access the grid down in the Google Drive, and then you'll be able to work through those as well. So you need both that grid and the information as well. So I'm going to leave that there today. Get that completed. Please get your work photographed to send through to your teachers, because we are a nosy lot. We'd like to see what you do. And that's that for today. So thanks for your time. Take care. Stay safe. Wash hands. Oh, and by the way, if you've got access to the film Miracles from Heaven, I think it's on Netflix. Do watch that, because it's well worth it, and it would fit perfectly in with what we're doing next. See you soon. God bless.